Apparently I am streaming. Oh, look, it's shown up on Twitch. So a bit of success. I've managed to fix the camera. There was a bit of a problem. The time delay is going to throw me a bit because I do have Twitch showing on one screen, and I've got YouTube not doing much on the other screen. So I don't know. It doesn't seem to be going to YouTube, but at the moment I really don't care. So I've got a bit of a distraction here because I've got the puppy who hasn't had a bath yet, and he needs a bath today, and he hasn't had his brush this morning, so it's just a little bit full on here. So I've got plenty of work to do. To those who don't know me on Twitch, because I'm only just starting this, I've got a steep learning curve ahead, trying to learn how to use Twitch and, you know, really get the most out of all of the different platforms I'm using. And I know nothing about streaming. I know nothing about all the technology. I know a fair bit about the law and justice and the lack thereof. Yes, I am a lawyer, but I don't want to do any streaming about in any way, shape or form that would sort of say, you know, listen to me, I'm a lawyer, because that would be giving legal advice, and you can't do that. You know, legal advice has to be one-on-one with a client who's actually sought you out and got a retainer agreement with you. So I just thought, you know, I'd like to do a Bank Slayer channel. I was going to go live on Twitch last night, but hadn't gotten to the bit about how to do multi-streams, and really hadn't, you know, figured out some stuff. So I'm trying to encourage the puppy to come and jump up. He's just sort of sitting there wanting to play. So anyway, it's only 7:40 in the morning. Western Australia, or at least Perth and the Peel region, are in lockdown. So we get the joy for 3 days of, you know, if we go out, we have to wear a mask in public. We're not allowed to go out unless, you know, there's an urgent reason. We're allowed outside for an hour exercise, and they haven't said whether this time you're restricted with how many people can be out exercising with you. The last time that we had a lockdown, I couldn't really walk the dog because it was really hot, and that was in January, so we're talking, you know, 36, 40 degrees Celsius on most days. So, you know, even in the evening when, you know, you were trying to walk the dog, you know, the road had cooled down enough, but it was still, you know, 32 odd degrees walking, and it just couldn't breathe. And at the moment I'm having a hard time. So before I say why I mention this bit, we're allowed to not wear a mask outside if we're doing vigorous exercise, which would be really great, but I can't do vigorous exercise because I had an accident a couple of weeks ago, nearly ripped my leg off, so I'm still kind of limping along, and it's not really good. But you know, what the hey, we'll see how we go. So I'm playing with the puppy inside, and, you know, I'll take him outside and play a bit of soccer with him shortly. And if you're wondering why as an Aussie I'm talking about soccer rather than football, that would be explained by the fact that football is an egg-shaped ball, and it doesn't really lend itself well to playing with a puppy. And I'm I only know about the footy, and I know some of the football players' names because my husband follows it. But I was brought up on soccer, so born and bred in Germany, and have been in Australia so long it doesn't bear really referring to. I'm definitely an Aussie, except for the whole, I'm not an ardent football fan. All right, don't shoot me. I have other endearing qualities for all the Aussies who might be wondering. I'm sure I do. Okay, might not have. But, so, with this whole lockdown thing, last time we had a lockdown, you had to wear a mask in the car, even if you'd slept all night with a bloke sitting next to you in the car. It's like, what? So this time they said, if you're out with people that you live with, then you don't have to wear a mask in the car. And I thank God for that. But I just don't get why we've got a 3-day lockdown. I'm not sure what 3 days will achieve. It's because the circumstances of how this guy came to be out in the community, he'd actually done all of his quarantine. He'd done it correctly, he hadn't broken out. And it turns out that he'd had a test and it showed he was negative. And then 4 days later, for some reason, he had another test. So maybe he started showing symptoms and he thought, oh, I better get tested. I don't know. But the second test turned out positive. So, what's going on? I don't know. But they found, I think another couple of tests have returned positive for the people that he was staying with. So, I don't know. I have no idea what's going on. And I really don't know what a 3-day lockdown will achieve. To me, it seems weird. Just weird. I don't know. So, the puppy's settled down, so I've just given him his toy back. And I need to have a schluck of my coffee because, it's coffee o'clock again. It's always coffee o'clock in the mornings. So, I'm feeling pretty rough around the edges this morning. It's, I don't know, I've got so much work to do. And I have zero inclination to do it. I mean, I really don't want to. And I mean, usually on days when I don't want to do physical work, I end up doing research and, I set things up. And because I only decided to go back to Bankslayer, I started the Bankslayer website and blog and persona back in 2009, 2008. I actually play one of the online games that I started in 2012, so I used Bankslayer as the moniker for that one. There's a lot of Bankslayers out, but mine was actually because we were fighting with our bank. And I thought it was a really cool name. I've read some of my profile, I think it's on YouTube, where, in 2010 we were pushing for a Royal Commission, which we eventually got in 2019, and let's just say it was bullshit all the way through. It was just rubbish. The Royal Commission we had, I felt sorry for the Commissioner because he thought he needed more time, but because of the terms of reference and all the rest of it, and he knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. Oh, I suspect, look, let me clarify, I think, so I'm interpreting things from his perspective, which he may not have done. He didn't ask for more time because I think he just wasn't going to look into all of that. He could have asked to expand the terms of reference to look at people that had been excluded. Like, when I put in a submission to the Royal Commission, even though our case had been specifically excluded, and I put in that, I made submissions to 2 Senate inquiries about our matter, and, you know, both inquiries found that we really need a royal commission into the banks to see how the hell they got away with doing this stuff to thousands of their customers. And it wasn't one bank, it was all of them. And they excluded all of the people that had put in submissions to these previous inquiries, even though the result of the inquiries was, we have to have a royal commission into this. You know, we need to look closely at these particular cases. So how was the royal commission into banking ever going to get anywhere? It was like, it was bullshit. It was bullshit from start to finish. And they did the terms of reference the way that they did them because they assumed that nothing would show up. Little did they know how naughty the banks were. You've got to, I think you can still watch some of the videos, I'm not sure. But, you know, the things that came out, like they were charging fees to dead people. And I'm not talking small amounts. I mean, that was a massive thing. They were selling products to people who didn't need them, couldn't afford them, were never going to be able to claim on them. And they did it knowing all of those things. It was just dodgy all the way through. You know, they were aware with one guy that, or at least they should have been aware, that one of the guys who borrowed a lot of money, he was on the hook with a scammer. Now, any normal bank manager would have sort of said, well, no, we're not going to lend you money to pay this money because, you know, your reason for doing it is so bad. And he lost everything. And it's like, yeah, you can find the report for the Royal Commission into Banking. Just Google it, you know, put Australia in there, and it will show up. So I'm a bit scared about moving my chair now and getting comfortable because puppy's lying right under it. But I'm going to have to because I'm not comfortable. Since nearly ripping my leg off, I'm finding it hard to sit still for a long time, so that's why I fidget so much at the moment. I hope that this isn't a new habit I'm going to get because I've got enough bad habits. I don't need to keep fidgeting even more. So let me see if I can get the puppy moved a little bit. Just gently take his backside away. Yes. That's a bit better. Not much better, but it's a bit better. So, yeah, I decided to kick Bank Slayer back in. I started a couple of YouTube channels to sort of cover this kind of stuff, and then the other night I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go back to Bank Slayer because one of my channels sounded a little bit legal and I didn't like it. I'd done so many videos. I mean, I had put in so much work and I simply didn't like it because I thought with the name, and I am still on the roll of practitioners even though I'm not working at the moment, and I have a practicing certificate which, you know, it's up for renewal now, so I have to make a decision whether I'm going to keep trying to get a job, which I was offered a job the other day. Can't take it because I'm south of Perth and the position was north of Perth, and I wouldn't move on a job that I'm not sure how I would go, and because it would be me practicing in my own firm with supervision sort of by someone. The firm I was going to go into the office with were going to want 50% of all my billable hours, and I don't believe in billable hours, so it would have been per job lot, and it just, I thought it was too high a risk to sort of say, oh look, let me think about it, I can look at moving up. So it's like, back to the drawing board with doing the whole job thing. So I did manage to do the live to YouTube last night, and I know that there's a thing between Twitch and YouTube, but I don't know what's going to happen with this channel, with life, with, you know, dedication, whatever. So at the moment I'm just streaming to both because, you know, why not? I'll see how I go. I tend to go off on tangents a lot, so for my other channel I had started doing PowerPoints and doing some short videos that I could show, and I think I'll probably do that. I'll probably end up incorporating some of the short videos into these lives that I'm going to do. I hope to do the lives every night of the 4 nights a week. That's a better way of putting it. And I will look at doing some occasional lives on a Saturday and Sunday, only because, you know, I've got a lot to say. Most of it isn't good. I do get a bit ranty. I worry that people, I mean, I still get contacted by people who've gone through what we've gone through. A lot of people are still fighting the banks. I mean, I know one guy who fought the bank for 30 years and he's finally had his win. It took 30 years. I mean, how does it take 30 years? And I mean, he thinks he's got all of the corruption sorted. He thinks he knows who did what where. And according to him, it involves judges, lawyers, you know, the court system. It's like, I need to see that evidence. I would be the last person to say there is no corruption in the law. It's definitely corrupt. There are people out there who simply do what they do with numero uno in mind. It's all about them. I only worked for 18 months part-time in a law firm, and it was enough for me to, because I was interacting with other law firms, I was talking to a lot of lawyers at meetings, and because you're working as a lawyer, you tend to have a lot more frank discussions about general issues that lawyers wouldn't talk about with just anybody. And some of the things you learn, they really reinforce to me what my initial opinion of the legal profession is. And would I be in trouble for saying that there's a lot of you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours? I don't know. It just, there are some lawyers that they're so aware of where the line is that they can literally edge along on it and just never quite go over to be pulled up. And to put it politely, that shits me. It's, you know, the legal profession holds itself out to be this wonderful beast, and having been thoroughly screwed over by it years ago, and now having a bit more of the inside track, I'm sorry, you really have to do something about it. You've got people going in to see a lawyer and there is so much trust and faith, and people don't know what the law is. They don't know how to deal with lawyers. They're getting screwed over, and it's not right. It's not fair. And look, the puppy's left and has opened the door, so I'm going to sip over and shut the door again, or at least lean it to. I'll be back in a sec. And I'm back. I've got someone living in the house with us at the moment, so I just don't want to disturb him too much. I mean, it is Saturday morning and he should be having some fun without, having to listen to me rant and rave again. Because I'm very good at ranting and raving, especially when I get to how the system holds itself out to be so good. When I first started blogging about this was in 2008. I designed my own website. This was back in the day when you had to do it yourself, You had to make up all the buttons yourself, and there's still a few really dodgy websites out there that people like me put out. And when we got settlement with the bank, because we ended up suing the bank after we'd lost everything, and they settled it out of court. Usually what they do is they get you to sign a non-disclosure clause. So you can't talk about anything. You can't talk about even having had a case. And I said to the barrister, I will settle because my husband wants to settle. It's shit money. As long as he never ever blames me for having a big mortgage, I'm fine to settle. But you tell them I will not sign a non-disclosure agreement. I am going to do a law degree. I am going to talk about this until the day I die. I am going to keep talking about it. I will not get rid of the blog. I will not do this. I will not do that. So in the settlement agreement, the only thing I wasn't allowed to say was how little money we got. But a few people have told me how much they got when they settled, and their losses were multiple millions. And so in comparison to ours, our losses were relatively minor. And I mean, we lost a lot. And, the lost opportunity and, the pure financial loss, that we could sheet all of that home to the bank. And our settlement is probably better than what a lot of other people got. And they're still trying to get justice. Now, I've given up trying to, get more money out of the bank, because that's not going to happen unless I can get a police officer, from the fraud squad to contact me and say, look, I want to look into this fraud. You say there was fraud. If it's criminal fraud, it's not statute barred. So give us the evidence. We will look into it, and we will charge someone. And, I reckon there'd be a whole pile of summons to be charged on that. But I've got the evidence. And, if anybody in the fraud squad is really keen on getting banks, get a hold of us. Most of us have got the evidence of the fraud. We just need somebody to give a damn. If there's evidence of fraud, then, the bank might be open to compensating us a bit more for our losses, because we did have significant losses at the time that they sold one of our properties, which it had subdivision approval on it, and they sold it without the subdivision approval in place. So they literally gave it away. And, that's a loss that we shouldn't have incurred. Had they sold it for the real value, we could have kept our other property, even if we had to take out a small mortgage on it. And they didn't even contemplate it. They just sold everything under value. They sold the property that we had under value, significantly under value. So there were 2 farming properties, and they went for a song. The people who bought them had a good old time because, they got it all sorted. The bank wouldn't let us subdivide the bigger farm to pay down the debt. And I'm not even sure if our lawyer put that proposal to them. He just told us, look, I've raised it with them, and they said no. But I didn't see any letters. I didn't see an official offer being put out to the bank. So in hindsight now, knowing everything I do about what the lawyer was doing and what the barrister was doing at the time, and I know this through other cases that were public, and, you know, there were court cases involving at least the barrister. There's a very public story on what my lawyer did to a very rich man in Perth. So I'm not talking out of school when I sort of say my legal team let me down. When we settled with the bank, when we actually sued them, I had a different lawyer, and he was great. He found a barrister who, you know, she got the matter sorted. I see her occasionally at official profession dues, and she doesn't talk to me. It's like, no, doesn't want to talk to me, and it's like really weird. I think it's really weird. You know, my spidey senses tingle. I could be wrong. My spidey senses have been known to be very wrong, but it doesn't sit right with me. Maybe that's because I'm very open to, you know, talking to people, even people I really loathe, I will talk to, because, you know, sometimes we have an initial reaction to someone, and, you know, we're wrong. We do tend to like the people. But there's this meme going around on Facebook at the moment, and I sort of think that's pretty spot on. I mean, it doesn't count with some of my good friends from when I was, you know, in my teens and early 20s. But there's this meme going around saying, you know, when I first met my best friend, I thought she was a real bitch. And we do sometimes do that because we get, I think it's because we see something in that person that so shows our own flaws to us that we sort of go, oh, I hate you. I don't know. Just a theory I've got. I could be wrong. I'm often wrong, but I've got lots of theories. So I feel driven to talk about the banks and the regulators. In Australia, we've got this really horrible system where everyone told me the bank couldn't have done what I say the bank did because our banks are so well regulated. Until you look at what the regulation is, what it means, and who it protects. So the Corporations Act means that, you know, that there's this thing about, you know, acting in good faith and blah, 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 blah. So people who don't know what the Act is about think, well, the bank, a corporation, has a duty of good faith, to act in good faith. But then when you actually read it, it means the directors of the bank, of the corporation, and the employees of the corporation have to act in good faith to not destroy the reputation of the corporation. So it's all about the corporation. It's not about customers of the corporation. There is actually nothing in the banking regulation framework that means that banks must act in good faith in any dealings with their customers. If the bank manager screws you over, that's a sad case of stiff shit. There is nothing in the regulations that really stops that. And then you've got ASIC, which, you know, looks into it. But when ASIC becomes aware that the banks have been doing dodgy things with customers, what's ASIC's role? Well, ASIC's role is to pull up the corporation and to take the corporation to court and, you know, have this whole thing. And it's usually a civil thing and there's a penalty and blah, 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 blah. But it's not about the customer. It's about the corporation. So ASIC is not about the customer. It's all about whether the company is doing the right thing, and any benefit derived from any court proceedings, the government gets the fines paid, not the customers who've been wronged. And then you get to AFCA, which used to be FOSS. So it used to be the Financial Services Ombudsman, which they found was pretty much controlled by the banks. So if you went to FOSS, essentially, they would rule in the bank's favour no matter what. And they replaced it with AFCA, but I have a suspicion that most of the people who were in FOSS, who were a bit dodgy, have gone to AFCA. Personal opinion, don't sue me for it. And what's AFCA's role? Well, AFCA basically does what FOSS did. It's a body that's paid for by the banks, and invariably, no matter how much evidence you give them, they say, oh, bank did nothing wrong. And it's like, you used to be able to see on the FOSS website, they used to have cases early where, they found that the bank had done something wrong, and, they told the bank what the bank should do to resolve it. And, sometimes that would be, you've given this dodgy loan, it's dodgy, that you really haven't got a legal leg to stand on, so you will do X, Y, Z. The bank would get back to the customer and say, look, we're going to do X, Y, Z, and it would be done. And the customer wouldn't lose everything because the bank would pick up the tab for their mistake. Or, whatever they want to gloss it over as. Whereas there became a shift, and suddenly what you're getting is all of the rulings in the favour of the banks. And AFCA is doing that now. I've been contacted by so many people who say, I've just had these messages come up. Look, it's really sweet. I don't need to become famous. I'll skip it, thanks. But AFCA now does the ruling in the bank's favour. I mean, I've been contacted by this one woman who shows me the statement that she was originally given by the bank, as in when the loan was drawn down, how it was applied, where did the money go. And then after the Royal Commission, when she sort of said, hang on a minute, there's something really wrong here, the bank sent her another statement. And the other statement shows totally different things, like, the money didn't go where the bank reckoned it went. So which one is right? There's obviously something to it. There is more than saying, oh, the bank did nothing wrong. Why would there be a different statement for where the funds were applied? It baffles me why a bank would need to dodgy up a second document if there wasn't something going on. And of course, this woman's now looking for a lawyer who will, help her. They lost everything and it was dodgy. She knows now where it was dodgy, and it's really hard to find a lawyer to represent you. And I've got a fair few qualifications under my belt now. Even while I was working, I sort of thought, I'm not getting as much learning as I can. From my supervisor, I'm not really being pushed to learn more things, and I'm not being trained as much as I think I should be. So this was an internal driver. So I did a master's with, I did my major in family law, and, did a couple of minor topics. So I did wills and estates, and I did some business law. And I did the Masters through the College of Law because it's practical. So it doesn't get me to the next step of doing my PhD, but my honours does. So, you know, my PhD, I can pretty much do that when I'm ready. Or at least, you know, start writing a lot more academically than I was when I was blogging. But I've also done the legal practice management course, which means I can start up my own law firm. And of course, when you do that course, it goes into all of the obligations that a law firm has to have, you know, and what goes into running a successful law firm, and, you know, how to make it earn money rather than, you know. And there's a lot to it. It is expensive to run a law firm. So I get some of the things that law firms do. And that law is a lot more complicated. Like, I think about when you watch the old legal shows, you know that the law was a lot simpler years ago, because all that politicians seem to do when they come in, they just want more laws. They never take any away. It's like, oh no, we'll keep that, but we'll add this. And it's like, oh, can we spend the next 10 years with politicians not fiddling around the edges with laws? Can we get them to take away all the bullshit we don't need? Because there's so much bullshit in all of these laws, and it just makes it so complicated. I mean, I'm not sure if you watched the movie 2012, where, you know, they end up being stuck in the library and they want to burn books. And, you know, two of them are arguing about, you know, are we going to burn the Gutenberg Bible? And this other guy shouts out, hey, come on over here. I've got the Tax Act. It's fine. We can just burn that. We'll live forever on the Tax Act. And like, stop making things so complicated. The reason people get, like, law-abiding citizens get into trouble is because all of the laws are so complex, and ignorance of the law is no defence. So, what? How on earth, you know, make it so that people can actually know the law and understand the law. Don't keep bringing in laws under the, you know, the shade of dark. Just be out there and say, look, we're talking about reforming this act because, you know, there's a lot of it that is outdated. It's so complicated. We want to simplify it. But everybody, you know, they all just want to bring in new laws, and it shits me. It really does. And I think that's how the banks get away with it, because there's so many exclusions, and it's already tweaked about keeping the banks safe and profitable. And it's like, oh, Christ. Hang on. I'll see if I can quickly find the book, which really gets my goat. I hate the author. Let me rephrase that. I don't hate the author. I just don't like his take on things. So have I got it here, or have I used it recently? I've probably used it recently, and God knows where I've put it. I'm forever doing this. Look, there's some... yeah, I must have it out in my pile of books still. I keep rearranging my books. It's not a good look. And it's only a small book. That makes it a bit harder, because it is really petite. But this guy talks about mortgage fraud. He's got a whole book on mortgage fraud. And essentially he's saying that our customers do this. And every single case, he sort of talks about how the customer did it, blah, 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 blah. I can point to 10 cases on exactly the same circumstances where it wasn't the bank customer. Bank customer didn't know it was going on because the bank managers and the people who are, drawing up these loans, they're the ones fiddling the books and the customer gets the blame. And it's like, and these are just 10 cases that I know of personally. So you can imagine if I did some research, if I went into a couple of the research databases I've got access to, and I Googled it, searched it properly, I would find thousands where the banks actually did it. And the banks knew they were doing it. I mean, I can tell you right now, in our case, the fraud was, we put in a loan application and I'd phoned the bank manager and I sort of said, look, I've got this opportunity. I thought that I would have sold the farm by now to be able to do it. I don't have to buy the farm I've put an offer into. Or at least I think I can't. No, the first time that I called, I said, I'm not sure how the offer went in, whether I actually have to do it, have to follow through, or if I can still get out of it. And before we did the loan application, I found the documents, and it was actually not, if we get a loan, it was, we're not going to go ahead if we haven't sold the farm, or if we haven't got a final offer on the farm. So we didn't have to buy the new farm. When I was talking to the bank manager, he said, oh, look, do up a business plan and we'll put it in and see how we go. So I spent about 2 hours or so doing up a business plan, which I sent to him, and they got back to me pretty much by the end of the day and said, oh, it's looking good. We've got a tentative yes. It looks like it's going to go through. And so, we kind of said, right, well, I then phoned my friend whose farm I wanted to buy, and I said, look, it looks like we'll get the money, so I'll let you know. So we had a week, I think, to make it final. And, my friend wanted to know if we were going to buy it or not. So I didn't say it was final. I said we were waiting to hear back from the bank to actually have it finalised. So by the Friday, it looked like, Friday morning I phoned, by Friday afternoon said, it's got to go to Melbourne because it's over our lending limits. So, we'll let you know as soon as that comes back. And what happened on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is the bank manager's assistant kept phoning me. And I didn't know that the bank manager had gone on holidays. And this assistant was actually the acting bank manager. And she kept asking me questions. And she said, oh, yes, you've got the loan, but we've got to redo the application. So, we'll do it this way, and I'll just get more details off you. And, faxes went flying, and it was just convoluted. And so we did that. She asked me to tweak the business plan just a little bit. It wasn't much. And this was for a loan that had already been approved, as far as I knew. And I didn't find out until after we had the loan and we went into default and the bank had us go to a mediation, that there was a second loan application. They never told us our loan was rejected. Our loan application was rejected outright. And had they told us, we wouldn't have gone ahead, because my father-in-law was a bank manager, top bank manager at the old R&I before it became Bank West. He would deal with the likes of the Allen Bonds and, all of the big businesses in town. So you know, from dealing with him, and he would often talk about banking and, you know, how strict it was. You know, we would have assumed that when the bank came back to us and said, look, sorry, the loan application just isn't strong, so, you know, the bank's rejected it, I would have phoned my friend and said, look, I can't get the loan, we've got to let it go. Really sad. I would have been devastated, you know, but we had a farm, we had reasonable prospects, we could have done what we wanted to do and made lots of money and then moved to somewhere else if we wanted. But that's not what happened. The acting bank manager didn't tell me our loan application was rejected. And then she dodged up another one, and suddenly I had 5 people working for me for no money, full time. It's like, what? And suddenly I had an extra son. And it's like, really? And I didn't know any of that until after we'd lost everything, because one of the things that happened while we were getting ready for summary judgment is our son got really sick. I mean, he was at death's door. He was put into Narrogin Hospital with what they thought was pneumonia, and he kept getting worse. They ended up getting the helicopter, taking him to Royal Perth. And, you know, by the time his girlfriend and I got to Royal Perth, you know, they were not happy campers. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. He kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it's like, you know, I mean, he's coughing up all of this blood and gunk, and it's like absolutely devastating. I'm supposed to be getting ready for summary judgment. On Monday when I got home from the hospital, I received a copy, well, my husband received a copy of the bank's affidavit. And the only reason we got this is because, and it's the only favour my lawyer ever did us. When I first started talking to the lawyer, he decided that my husband's case and my case were different. He would represent me. My husband could self-represent and just stand up in court and say, well, you know what she's saying. And then if things went pear-shaped, he would have a different case. And so the bank had to send my husband a copy of their affidavit. And it was 184 odd pages, and I looked at it and nearly died from just, I was so overwhelmed. So I phoned the lawyer and I said, look, I've got a copy of this affidavit. I really can't read it. You know, my son's in hospital, he's dying. I can't deal with this. So can you do it for me? And he said, yep, not a problem. And I said, look, let me know if there's anything in it that you think is in support of my version of events. And I ended up, a couple of days later, I phoned an endocrinologist who I'd had to see earlier, like a couple of years before, for something. And actually, no, I emailed him and I said, look, I know that, you know, this is out of line, but I don't know where to turn. I gave him all of my son's symptoms and I said, you know, he's in Royal Perth and they've got no idea what's going on with him. You know, what the hell? And he ended up phoning me. He phoned me back about half an hour or an hour after I'd sent the email, which I thought, I was blown away by that. And he said, look, it can only be 2 things. It can only be AIDS or Wegener's. And I said, well, he's had so many AIDS tests and they keep coming back negative. So, you know, and he's not in a high-risk group. He's never drunk alcohol. He's never done drugs. He doesn't smoke. And before you say that I'm a mother with rose-coloured glasses. I can't say the same thing about my daughter, but I know 100% that he didn't do that. And he says, well, that's really good, because if it's Wegener's, the treatment won't be effective if he is a drug user, or, you know, if all of these other things are true about him. So he says, look, go and see the doctors and tell them to test him for Wegener's granulomatosis and see how you go. And of course, I'm only thinking about my son at this stage. You know, everything with the bank, stuff that. I've got a lawyer, he can deal with it. And I remember getting to the hospital, like I was leaving, you know, almost ready to leave when the doctor phoned me, so straight off to Perth. And I see the doctor coming out, and I call him Dr. Sweat Hands. He was just sweaty all over. Dr. Sweaty. Anyway, I sort of say to him, well, have you tested him for Wegener's granulomatosis? And this guy had an attitude. He says, what? Dr. Google told you that? I said, well, actually, no. I contacted a doctor who said it can only be that or AIDS. Now, you've done the AIDS tests. It's not AIDS. Can you do the Wegener's test? And he says, we've already done it. And I said, well, do it again. And I know that they hadn't done it because it takes time for the test results to come back before you can treat it. You can't treat for Wegener's before you've got the test result, apparently. And then it took that many days for the test result to come back, and they started treating him for that. And that's what he had. And I mean, I will be ever so grateful forever because my son survived it. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. So I never read the affidavit. On the day that we walked into summary judgment, on the way there, we walked from the lawyer's office to the court, and that bloody lawyer said to me, well, I haven't really read the affidavit. And that ended up meaning that we could never bring up all of the dodgy information that I found out later. In that affidavit, I think it was on page 84 or something, it was a fair way in. They put in an internal bank document. And in that internal bank document, it showed all of the dodgy things. That's where I found out that I had a new son who was going to work for free. My son was going to work for free. My son was never part of the business plan. My retired parents were apparently coming out of retirement to work for free. My parents at the time were in their mid-70s, not capable of working long hours or even at all. I would never have asked them to work, and they were going to work full-time for free. It's like, what? And they dodged it up so much. And there was this cute little box on the form that says, although the above table shows that the customer is unable to make nominal repayments, so that's your normal repayments you've got to make, you know, we have to take into consideration that they own property. So it was a predatory loan. They gave us the money because they knew that as soon as we defaulted, they would have all of our properties. You know, all of the assets that we'd accumulated over a lifetime of my husband working bloody long hours, getting paid bugger all money, because back in the day, when you were working on the mines, you weren't getting as much in comparison to now. We did it hard. We lived in Kambalda and did the mines up there. You know, we did our time in the bush. And then we moved to Boddington, and, you know, we did our time working hard. And the bank gave us a predatory loan, which apparently is not illegal in Australia. So, good on the government for not closing loopholes on the banks after deregulation, and deregulation screwed over every bank customer in Australia. If you want to watch a really good movie, watch The Bank. That's a pretty good movie to watch. It's very enlightening, to be honest. Now it's Anthony LaPaglia is in that. He's not the lead. I can't think of the other actors. But funnily enough, one of the guy who plays the chauffeur in that movie actually ended up in court with a bank as well. And the bank had done the dirty on him. And he ended up getting a law degree as well. But he doesn't work as a lawyer. He's back to doing what he likes to do. But it's, it's a bit interesting. So the banks have been really bad. So I just want to use this channel to, talk about what the banks have been doing. And when I did my honours thesis, I really wanted to sheet all of this home to the government. I wanted to see if I could make a connection to, the government's inaction to all of this. And I think the way to do it was to run through, the legislative process. And, the government does the legislation and the courts enforce it, and, companies have to follow it. And if the companies don't follow it, there's regulators. So that would have been the way to do it. But foolishly, I decided to run it through the lens of the Royal Commission, which got a bit dodgy. And the reason it got dodgy is because the week that I started on my honours, everybody started talking about, we have to have a Royal Commission, which really muddied the waters, because every day I would get thousands of emails saying, have you seen this news update? My Facebook feed was filled with all of the live feeds from politicians putting their 5 cents worth out there, and actually it was probably 2 cents worth. It wasn't much of an opinion. And, the government saying, no, our banks are well regulated, they wouldn't do anything. And Labor saying, well, fair suck of the sav, mate. They've been doing dodgy shit for years. And it ended up just really doing my head in. And 2 weeks, 3 weeks before I was due to hand it in, I threw my hands up in the air and I said, I absolutely hate what I've written. And the last 3 weeks, I should have been at the stage where I was just doing the tidying up and really, correcting things and doing this, that and the other and making it look pretty. And instead, I rewrote it from scratch. And I still wasn't happy with it, but it was much better than my first effort. And I still ended up getting honours. I missed out on first class honours by like 1 or 2 points. There wasn't much in it. And I'm still really pissed off about that. I would have preferred first class honours. But honours nonetheless, and I can do a PhD, which I'll probably start working on getting towards wrapping my head around doing academic writing again, and doing some research. And I might see if I can publish a few articles before I apply to do a PhD, only because it's a big expensive exercise and I'm absolutely broke now. Not working tends to do that for you. What else do I want to talk about? I've got plenty to talk about. It's I'm going to probably do some discussions on some of the previous inquiries and their findings on them. When I was talking about my blog, I actually got to keep my blog when we settled with the bank, but I was asked to get rid of it when I did my application to the role of practitioners. The Legal Practice Board thought that, the title of the blog was a bit problematic and, seemed to be a little bit unprofessional. So I agreed to take it down. But at the time, and I can't see how I couldn't remember, because I was so excited when it happened. But I guess because it happened before I got really caught up with my law studies and, a fair bit of time had passed. And, we'd already settled with the bank, and the bank didn't make me take the blog down. I totally forgot that the National Library of Australia actually archived it. So it is still available on there. And they contacted me to archive it relatively early. And I guess somebody was paying attention and realised that what I was blogging about was serious, it was true, it was, would refer to cases and things that politicians were doing. And I know that a couple of times I blogged about politicians and what they were up to, how they were connected to this. And then within a few days, you'd hear that they'd resigned for family reasons. Now, I won't mention any names here because I don't know that it wasn't family reasons. Just the timing seemed a bit odd. It just was really weird. And, by the time I had my meeting with the Legal Practice Board about my blog, my readership had really gone down because I'd stopped blogging. It wasn't at the forefront for the whole time that I was studying for my law degree, because I did more work for my law degree than most law students would, because I was very invested in it because of what had happened to us and the fact that I'm not young, and I had been out of school for a long time, and even though I'd gotten a Bachelor of Arts, it was a different form of writing, and I thought that the Bachelor of Arts was, it was relatively easy for me in, the fact that it was all, it's really hard to describe what I'm getting at. It was, because I did the Bachelor of Arts in Internet Communications because I wanted to do website design, and that was the only degree that actually offered units in website design, where you ended up with a good qualification that you could get a job with. I had an interest in all of that. I found it interesting. I found it easy because of my interest, and, especially the website design stuff. I already knew some of the basics. Having designed my own websites, and, I'd done a small TAFE course just before I designed my own website when we got in trouble with the bank. So the Internet Communications degree was easier. I did a lot of HR units and business management units as my minor. I understood all of that. I already had a qualification as a counsellor, so the talking to people in the human resource management section, I could use my experience as a counsellor with that. So I found it easier in comparison to the law degree. The law degree, I had a lot of exams, invigilated exams, so there was that extra level of stress of, I don't do well in exams, never have. Even in high school when they were relatively easy. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I've got this thing about exams, I get a bit anxious about it. I always did well. I mean, a couple of exams where I did poorly, I had such high grades for the rest of the unit that I still ended up with a really good grade. I mean, my grades were really good for law school. I worked hard for it. I ended up getting an award for, the legal clinic, which I'm proud of. As I say, I worked hard for what I did. The legal clinic, I worked with a top barrister who was my lecturer. She does fabulous things out there in the real world. I follow her on a few platforms, and she does do a lot of hard work for people who need help. They're very disadvantaged people that she helps, so it was really good working with her. So I worked really hard at my law degree, and then I ended up doing the masters and all of these other things to really wrap my head around how a lawyer would deal with this. As I say, when you first come out and you get admitted and you work for a law firm, you're restricted for 2 years, so you must have a supervisor, and it's 2 years full time. So I only did 18 months part-time, so I've still got a fair bit of supervision to go. But in that first 2 years of supervision, you get taught the ropes of how to be a lawyer. I was always told what you learn in law school is totally irrelevant to how you practice the law. And in many ways that's true, but depending on how you're taught, and I mean, some lecturers teach things in a practical way and some teach it in that general overview way, and you can get a lot of stuff out of your law degree depending on your lecturer. I found myself going back to a lot of my notes to do my research in that when I was working. I probably, I know, I really enjoyed being a lawyer. I loved working with people and helping them out. I like solving puzzles, and for me, how to get the best outcome for your client is often a puzzle, and you have to put all of the pieces together properly. There's a part of me, I almost became a nun when I was younger, and then my mum did this wonderful thing. She sent me to boarding school, and I tell you what, the Sisters of Mercy beat that out of me really quickly. On your mum, was a good thing you did. But so I've always been spiritually inclined, and it's not a big stretch to say in times of trouble, you go to prayer. Now, I do not go into a Catholic church at all. I have no interest, because I've become convinced that mankind ruins everything. So I've taken out the in-between, If I pray to God, I'm sure God will listen to my prayer without me going to the priest and saying, can you say this to God for me, please? So I'm actually thinking of writing a book about magic, because it's not a far stretch to go from spiritual to magic, the magic of the law. But my take on the magic of the law is, it's preparation. It's preparation, preparation, preparation. If you can't afford a lawyer and you have to do it yourself, and you have to do something, if a bank's taking you to court, you've really got no choice. You've got to show up, especially if you think that you've done all the right things and you don't know why you're in trouble. And if you can't afford to pay a lawyer, you're going to have a really hard time getting a lawyer to take you on, because you can't get legal aid. Legal aid does not cover the civil issues you've got. They've now said, but we've got this thing for banking. But And I've spoken to a few people about that, and I find it really problematic because it doesn't seem to address all the right issues. It's, I mean, I applied for a job with them particularly to get into the banking, and it seems a bit weird. And I mean, banking law gets difficult anyway because you've got, all of the states have got banking law, and then there's the federal government banking law, and then there's all of the, if you go into a state court, you've got the state laws that kick in, and then you've got some of the state laws being overridden by the Commonwealth laws. So the Limitations Act might be overridden by all of the legislation that covers banking. It's so hard to figure it all out. So, if you can't afford to spend a lot of time on a lawyer, how do you instruct a lawyer? So one of the things I want to do is actually help people to wrap their head around how to get their story to a lawyer quickly, efficiently, without fuss, no muss. Just reference the documents that you've got that back up your point, and do I have a case? If I can get people to do that before they have their first appointment with a lawyer, I can probably save them a lot of money. And it's general things, so it wouldn't be legal advice. So I can use my channel to do that. And, I can engage with people if I do lives and they leave, they engage in chat. That'd be pretty good. It's, I don't know. Not sure what's happening with this live stream. Oh, hang on. Let me just do something. Let's see how this goes. I changed a setting on this. See, this is where lives are really good, isn't it? So, let's see if that kicks in. I don't know if it will, because I haven't given it a title on YouTube. I just thought that I would throw out a practice one, and I've kind of stayed here. Only because, I want to get into the habit. I want to know where I let myself down. If I can figure out where I let myself down, then I can improve quicker. It's I'm taking today's session as a learning curve on, what do I need to be aware of. So I've got 3 screens. I actually want 6 of them, only because, bit greedy. But, what do I need to keep an eye on? So I'm trying to set this up so that I can see my chat on my OBS, and the chat isn't coming up on OBS, it's actually on Twitch. And I can see the delay on Twitch, which does drive me nuts, but that's all right. YouTube still doesn't seem to be showing it, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, I don't know. This might not be showing up because on this one I've stopped links from posting, and links are still enabled in Twitch, so I'll have to do something about that, because I don't like people posting links in chat, because while I'm chatting I can't, and going live, I can't go and check out a link. I know young people can. I was brought up in a pre-digital world, and analog still resonates with me. And I can tell you right now, I do not multitask. Cannot multitask. And I'm a firm believer that if you reckon you can multitask, you're kidding yourself. Because while you're paying attention to one thing, you're not paying attention to everything else, because we can't. We can't give 100% attention to lots of things. And by that I mean you can't do different topics. So if you, I guess that the best way that I can put it is, if you're an air traffic controller, you have to have in mind so many things, but they're all connected. They're all intimately connected. So, you know, they are trained to really keep an eye on how many aircraft have I got under my control, where are the aircraft, where are they on the radar, what automatic systems are going, has anything switched off. They're in that mode, and I would not be an air traffic controller for quits. It is far too stressful, in my humble opinion. It takes genius to work there, and a lot of people do, and they're very, very good at it. And, you know, are they multitasking? No, it is part of that one task. They can't do that as well as do a Facebook stream or look at this. You know, they can't do their job and follow Facebook or Twitter or anything else, because that is not part of, and that would be true multitasking if they did their job as well as everything else. And if you're going to give me links in chat that take me off what I'm doing, that's not very good. It's not good for me. It's I don't like it, especially not if you're selling me something. I think there's limits. I think, you know, I watch some of the things coming out, like people protest. I have no problem with people protesting. But if you're at a protest and you're asking to speak to someone, and that person deigns it important to actually tell you what's going on, and they come out on to a podium, or they just stand there and they try to tell you something, and you're screaming over them, and there's thousands of you screaming over them, why? Let the person speak. And if you disagree with what they're saying, then you can scream. But don't talk over people so that nobody can hear what they've got to say. I hate that. When I was working, I liked to switch off for a few hours, just to not be involved with thinking about the law and, you know, how do you solve this problem, and where would you research this, and, you know, can you find a case like your clients, you know, to really back you up, because if they're really similar and they had a win, then maybe your client will have a win. So I would watch YouTube videos that was sort of about, you know, thinking about things. And you may disagree with me, I liked listening to Dr. Jordan Peterson, because he never rammed his opinion down my throat. He didn't tell me what to think. He just said, how about you consider? This is what I think. This is my interpretation of this. And what do you think? And I like that. I like people telling me facts and then sort of saying, you might find more things, you know, go to, maybe you want to research this. Oh, not good. That's my throat telling me I'm not drinking my coffee quick enough. That's a bit rough. Anyway, so I would watch these things. And then they would give talks at universities, like Ben Shapiro. I don't agree with everything that Ben Shapiro says, but I like the way that he says it. And then he will mention something and I'll be able to Google it and sort of get more information, and then think about, well, what's the alternative view and how's the alternative view presented? Are there any flaws in either logic? There's lots of flaws. I mean, when you tell me something, I will look at what you're not telling me. Because what you're not telling me might be more relevant. Because do you know what you're not telling me? Is it something you haven't heard about? If you know it and you're just ignoring it and it's really important, then why are you not telling me? Anyway, so I would watch these videos and they would go to a university and suddenly the protesters would show up because they just didn't want these opinions to be heard. And if you're going to university, in my opinion, you're there to learn. And if you are so offended by another political position, then a what? You know, buckle up, sunshine. The world, the real world, or at least it used to be, in the real world we have different opinions and we just talk about it and then we can agree to disagree. My sister, whom I love dearly, has got a totally opposite political view to me. And I won't argue her to try to change her mind. She's entitled to her opinion. You know, she knows certain things, but if I find something where, you know, sometimes she'll make a comment and I'm there, but you're commenting on this and I'm not sure if you know about that. And that's just because she may not know about that. Because unlike me, my sister does not spend a lot of time on YouTube and she doesn't look for alternative opinions. And Google and Facebook and everybody puts you into an information bubble. So if you're looking at a certain point of view, the algorithm will simply keep feeding you that position. It will never show you the other side. This is one of the things I loved about doing my internet communications degree, because I realised that we are put into an information bubble. And everything gets reiterated. So if you're in, say you're signed up to all of the Labor Party, the politicians, the platforms, you know, you're following them on Twitter, or you only do Facebook, and you're connected to all of the people you know because you're a member of the Labor Party, then Facebook will feed you that. It will suggest stories, it will highlight that, and of course all of the stories that the politicians share will show up on your feed, and you don't hear the other side. Now, at the moment, I can tell you I am not a member of the Liberal Party. Many years ago, when they were a party worth being a member of, I was, and then as soon as they showed their true colours, I was out of there, because I'm more of a libertarian. I believe in small government, but I also believe that we have an obligation to look after the most, you know, the people who are least capable of looking after themselves. There are people who are absolutely unemployable. I don't think that we should make their life a misery. I think we should support them. I'm aghast at what our federal Liberal government is doing about the NDIS, the, you know, Centrelink payments. It's all punishing people who can't defend themselves, have got nothing. You know, when your unemployment benefits haven't gone up in 20 years, but your dollar doesn't buy you anywhere near as much as it did 20 years ago, I think there's a real problem, mates. You know, when so much of your social security goes on rental because you're not eligible for rental assistance for some quirk. I'm sorry. No, we can't do that. We can't send people bankrupt and to the depths of despair because you want to spend more money on your political mates. You know, if the government had done the right things and stopped the banks from bankrupting people and stopped the banks from throwing people on the trash heap. A lot of people I know who went through this banking stuff are now on unemployment benefits because they're no longer capable of working because it's destroyed their life. It's destroyed them. When this happens to a man, it's a bit different to happening to the wife who's always been in a supportive role. We were lucky when we did it because my husband never stopped working. We were actually in the financial position where my husband could have started paying back the loan as was, but the bank wouldn't renegotiate. It was just bullshit from start to finish. But my husband never lost his work, whereas a lot of people, especially when it's a small business that's taken to the cleaners by the banks, there's a level of destruction that happens in a man's psyche where suddenly he doesn't feel capable of going out there. And I mean, there's also a lot of people who keep fighting the bank, but they're rebuilding as they're doing it. So the people I'm talking about who are stuck and can't work are the ones that it's just destroyed them. And that's down to the government. And now the government's saying, well, we don't care. You will go and work until, you're dead. You will do this. You will do that. And it's unbelievable. Like, they make the unemployed apply for so many jobs a month. And I mean, the jobs aren't out there. And people are applying for jobs that they've got no hope of getting because they don't have the qualifications. And that is putting a burden on the business community. And suddenly, businesses who don't have jobs available are getting job applications from people who aren't qualified, who can't work there. So it's adding an extra level of bullshit to people that have got nothing to do with the unemployment rate. I mean, if you're a small business and you can afford to hire someone, you put out job ads and you will deal with the applications. Businesses are so overwhelmed, and everybody complains that businesses aren't responding. They're not even acknowledging that they've received your application. And I would respectfully say that's because they're getting thousands of them. And, they won't even automatically set up to respond to every email they receive, because otherwise they're acknowledging receipt of an email that they may not be seeing, where it might have legal implications. So they err on the side of caution and just ignore the emails for jobs. It's a horrible way to go, but you can't blame them. It's a burden on the business community that they shouldn't have, in my opinion. I think the government has massive overreach. I don't like the way that they're pushing businesses to exclude people who haven't had the vaccine, when the vaccine rollout in Australia is A, pitiful, B, there's evidence to suggest that the vaccines are problematic. One of them apparently kills you, and in a population of what? Have we got 25 million odd people? I don't know. We're not 30 million people, right? So if they say that the odds of something harming you is 1 in 20 million, how come we've got so many in Australia? There's, obviously your stats are wrong. Something's wrong. And when you stop people talking about it, and when you stop doctors from talking about it, why aren't, I think they are now, but doctors weren't allowed to have an opinion on it that was different to the official line. Why? I need to hear both sides. I need to make an informed choice. Now, I had, years ago, I went into anaphylactic shock, so I'm not going to take the risk with a vaccine for something that, the vaccine will stop me getting worse symptoms. It only affects me. having a vaccine does not stop me spreading it if I get the virus. If the vaccine stopped me from spreading the virus, then I might have to have a serious discussion about what the long-term effects would be. I can tell you that when I went into anaphylactic shock, that wasn't the end of it. It was 6 months before I could even bend over to pick things up. It was 4 years of being exhausted to the stage where getting out of bed in the mornings was a Herculean effort. And I went into anaphylactic shock over 30 years ago. I still suffer from exhaustion today, and it's never left me. I've ended up being diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I'm now on T3 and T4 replacements. I still feel exhausted all the time. It's, I'm not as sick as I was before I got the T3, but I'm still exhausted all the time. Do I want to take an experimental vaccine that might make me worse? Hell no. I've got days now when I lie in bed in the mornings and I'm there. I know I've got to get up, but shit, I don't want to. I had a serious accident on Easter Saturday, and since then my body temperature's been low. I got down to 35.2 for quite a while. It's slowly coming up. I'm still not back in the normal range. I'm still under the normal range. And what's going to happen to me if I take the vaccine? And the government is trying to tell businesses to just not have people who don't take the vaccine. You can exclude people who haven't had the vaccine. You go ahead. You bring in that policy. No one's talking about where's the exemption certificate. If you're going to make me download the app for the vaccine passport, can I have my exemption certificate on that? Why do we have to have a vaccination passport when all the vaccine does is lessen the symptoms? I just don't understand it. That's at the same level as if you're driving in a car, you must have a mask. Even if the people you're in the car with are living with you and in the house, you don't have to wear a mask. It's nonsensical. Where's the logic? So I have a lot of problems with the government. I don't like government responses to things. But I listen to other people's opinions. They're entitled to their opinion. If I do have a discussion with my sister and she says something like about one of the politicians and she thinks that, like she's saying something about a Liberal politician and, no Labor politician ever has done that, I can tell you that if there's a politician in the news over something, I actually see if I can find, and sometimes I remember it through the banking stuff, but what were the other party doing? Because I hate it when politicians say, so-and-so is so bad because they've done this. Well, they've been accused of it. Did they do it? Is there going to be a trial? Can we not judge before we have all of the facts? What are the facts? I'm happy to talk about it, but don't say they're guilty and, it's innocent until proven guilty. But don't rubbish a whole party if your own party's done the same thing. If there's members of your party that are involved in similar behaviour, don't go all high and mighty and say, well, we're better than them because, we are. Don't like it. I will point it out, but not in defence of the person. So let's face it, it's all pretty rough. And I think I've just about done enough. An hour and a half, and all I was going to do was see if this works. And I'll have to see if it actually recorded to the other channel as well. we'll see. I'll be doing this a few times over this week just to practice. So see how I go. Have a great day.